Hi everyone, welcome to another ALIA Graphic Creator Chat, and I'm Jurgi from Kingston Libraries in Victoria, and today I'm very excited to be talking to Darren Close, the creator of Killeroo, and altogether a great man. Anyway, let's dive in. Good afternoon, Darren. How are you going?
Hello, I'm good.
Good, excellent. I really like, is this the studio where you usually work?
Yeah, pretty much. It's my little square area of the living room. So,
Excellent. It's always good
hmm,
to see the creator studio. All right. You're the creator of Killeroo,
yep.
and we'll talk about Killeroo later. But who is Darren Close? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do?
Yeah, I'm a freelance graphic designer and artist, living Coburg in Melbourne, and yeah, been publishing comics for 20 years, and both for myself and have done some work for others, doing inking and lettering and that sort of thing. A few commissions here and there, and yeah, that's about it.
Good one. Yeah, I know that you've been around for some time, so most people may know you, but I just thought, just,
Sure.
there may be someone who doesn't know you, so just in case. Um, did you read comics as a kid? And if so, like what kind of comics? Do you remember any that stood out? Or
Yeah, basically, I grew up in the country in northern Victoria, and the only comics that we had access to there was newsagents, and got into probably a lot of the Marvel and DC of the late 80s, early 90s. Lots of Spider-Man and Batman and so forth. And for my stuff, or my interests, I basically followed the artists. I was like, I wouldn't necessarily read a comic when they shifted artist. I might stop reading it there and follow that artist to wherever they went. So it was quite an exciting time in comics back then. You had the formation of Image Comics, and that was just a huge boom before the bust. But at that time, it was just a really exciting time in comics, and I was buying stacks of them. It was great.
yeah, I was a little bit like that as a kid as well. I had my favorites. Like I always loved Spider-Man and Thor,
Yep.
but especially. But I always followed the creators as well. So there were some writers that I really liked. There were some artists that I really liked, and wherever they went, I followed.
Yeah.
And for example, like Thor has always, like since I was little, he's always been one of my favorites. So when I was a kid, it was the whole Walt Simonson era,
Yeah.
which was excellent. And
Yeah.
and
There's
then
some great comics there.
I've always tried to follow him.
Yeah. I've
Another
got
one
a
was,
I've got a whole bunch of his stuff. Yeah, I'm a
yeah,
fan too.
yeah, he's excellent. And another one that I've always followed ever since has been Jim Starlin as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, he did the Infinity Gauntlet. I think that was my first,
yeah.
because I was buying Silver Surfer at the time, which he might have been writing actually, and Ron Lim was drawing.
Yeah, he did some of
And
that.
yeah, I had a huge run of that stuff. That was some great comics.
Yeah, my favorite of his was Dreadstar.
Okay.
Yeah, I absolutely love that series, and I think it's unfortunate that a lot of people don't know about it. But yeah, excellent series, excellent.
Hmm.
So for you, what was the turning point? The moment that you decided, well, this is what I want to do. I want to do comics. Because it's not great as a profession here in this
No,
country.
it's not
So,
really something I would recommend. But no, I went to high school in Benalla, and Damien Shanahan was at that school, and he was really into comics, and we were sort of trading comics and buying comics and so forth. But he was drawing his own comics,
Mm.
And that intrigued me because I'd always liked drawing, but I'd never really was driven in one particular area to focus it on. And he'd just started publishing Anthology and his Pizza Man comics. And he kind of took me under his wing a little bit, and I got to see how they were putting together those comics. And yeah, over time, I basically built up enough of my skills, I guess, and confidence to start making some of my own.
Excellent.
Hmm.
Now, I love Killeroo. I
Cheers.
absolutely love these comics, and you know, I've spoken to you at a few different events and
Yeah,
collected these ones.
yeah, got a few
Uh,
there.
yeah, you know, you were the creator of Killeroo, as far as I know. Um,
Yep.
you know, how did it come about? You know, can you tell us the origin of Killeroo?
Yeah, I was studying. I went after high school in Benalla. I went to La Trobe Uni in Bendigo for graphic design, and there was this university magazine there, the Third Degree, and they had a few cartoons and comics done by uni students there as well. But I was starting to get a bit cocky with my artwork, and I looked at the art in for some of these, and I didn't think it was very good. So I thought I could have a go at putting together a strip for the university magazine, and I'm not sure what made me think. I think it was. I think at the time there was some sort of news article about a kangaroo that got found with like an arrow stuck in its neck. Um, and I think it might have even been rumored that there was like it was students that did it, like with just a bow and arrow out in a paddock. And I somehow came across the idea of it's a shame that the kangaroos can't fight back. And I just was just sort of mucking around and came up with the idea of a killer kangaroo that could fight back. And when the students went out to kill them, they were actually being hunted by the kangaroos instead. And it was just a silly sort of one-page strip that got printed on the back of the magazine. And I didn't actually make any more. It was only like one strip, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
But I still sort of played around with the character and was just sketched in my sketchbook, coming up with different things. It wasn't until about 5 years later, after I'd started a website called Oz Comics. This is all pre-Facebook and social media, and there was like a message board there with a lot of local creators. And before then, like the only time local people could see each other was at a convention or something like that, because everyone's splintered all over the country. So
Yeah.
that the sort of the internet broke down those distances, and people could correspond and share their work and that sort of thing. And I got inspired by a lot of creators that were doing their comics, and I thought I wouldn't mind making some proper comics myself. And I just thought of the Killeroo character, and maybe I could dust him off and publish something with him. And got in touch with a few of the artists on the message board, which included like Ben Templesmith and John Somariva and a few other today's big names. And got a cover out of Ben, and John did a story. I had a couple of other artists, I think it was Evan Jacobson and Danny McGillick, and basically just came up with some Killeroo stories and published the first book. I think it was around 2001, 2002,
Mm-hmm.
and it was terrible. It's really bad. Got for comics. The art's great, but my writing isn't. And I did another book. I followed that up with book two, which was sort of like an anthology of Killeroo stories by other creators. And it was just a mistake to let go of the reins completely. I'd basically said to, what would you do in a Killeroo story? And they'd come up with their idea and I'd just say, go, run with it, rather than trying to establish a singular character and how he existed in his world. It was just sort of like, it was like a comic of Elseworlds, the DC Elseworlds,
Yep.
where they basically go, well, here's a different character, here's a different character. So it was like, 7 or 8 stories of 7 or 8 different kinds of Killeroo. So it took a while, but I think around 2010, I decided to reboot the story with a few other artists, with Ryan Wilton, and just sort of, okay, let's figure out a proper origin story for the character, and then I can do ongoing stories with this guy, not a dozen other characters. So there's a lot of lessons were learned back then in how to actually tell us a continuing story of a character, rather than just throwing stuff at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, I really like that story. I really liked how, well, you just came up with it. You were just mucking around. Oh yeah, a killer kangaroo. Then you went through that stage of, okay, well, we're actually putting some comics together and different people and all that, and then learning from all that process.
Yeah,
Until you figured out exactly what you wanted. I have to say, I haven't read any of those. I've only
that's
read
good.
the newest stuff. Um, now I'm curious about those old ones.
Thankfully, they're just about out of print, so that's good.
Yes, collector's items, collector's items.
Mm.
But so in this new series of Killeroo books that you've
Yep.
published, um, you've been the main writer, but there are some other writers here and there as well. But you've been the main
Yeah.
writer.
Yeah, well, with the origin book was Scars, so that's sort of like issue 1, if you like, and that runs into the Gang Wars series that you've got there.
Yeah.
And at the start of that, Ryan and I basically sat down and we put together probably about a paragraph of a story kernel, if you like.
Yep.
So, and we then assembled a bunch of different writers and artists, well, writers first, and basically said, okay, here's all these little story kernels that we want to have in the book. Pick one that you like, and then you can sort of expand it out into how you want it to be. And that way it gave the writers some sort of freedom to come up with their own idea, but I was able to still hold the reins and make sure that basically where the character starts and where he ends in that story is where I want him to be. So, and just collaborating that way, and they'd come up with ideas, and I'd sort of, I'd either pull them back or I'd go, no, that sounds great, go ahead with that. So it's just a way of making sure that the essence of the character remains, even though different writers are approaching him.
I think that's really important, and I think you're doing a great job of it, because
Thanks.
uh, I really loved Scars, and that's actually the first one that I read.
Yep.
I don't have it here with me because we were kind of in the middle of moving house.
Oh, okay.
When this whole lockdown thing started, so I have some books here and I have some books in storage and things like that. But yeah, so Scars is a great entry point. So
Yeah.
anyone watching, I recommend you start there. And I absolutely loved it. But yeah, I really like how you're collaborating with different creators, but still making sure that you keep track of the story and the character and all that. So in this kind of collaborations, because you've collaborated with some different writers and lots of different artists.
Yep.
Sometimes you draw as well, but sometimes you don't.
There's been some where I've inked.
Yeah.
So I like to still be involved, and there's a few stories that I've decided to ink myself from another penciler's stuff. But primarily, I've used other artists, and it does tend to, you know, when you're paying very little, it's hard to crack the whip and get them to actually do the work. So with Gang Wars #6, I'm actually drawing that one entirely myself. So, and I found I'm even more slack than a lot of the artists that I'd been using. It's been a couple of years, and I'm still only a few pages in. But yeah, the plan is that I'm going to draw most of the Killeroo stories from this point on.
Okay, that's really interesting. And actually, well, here's one that you drew yourself.
Ah, yes, yep.
Yeah, you also gave me a very special drawing of Killeroo
Oh,
there.
it's a little sketch in there, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing your art. Actually,
Ah,
yeah,
cheers.
I'm really looking forward because this is also a great book, by the way. I absolutely
Thank
loved
you.
it. Very, very personal.
Yeah.
Very personal, and um, very intimate, very powerful stuff. So
Yeah, that came about from like a 24-hour comic challenge, which is what a exercise that I think it was Scott McCloud first came up with. I can't recall, but yeah, the challenge being you have to make a comic within 24 hours straight. Yeah, I just decided to do a little bit of an autobiographical comic, and with every page that I got in, it just got more and more intense, just really got quite dark. I found that quite therapeutic. I think that was a good book for me to get some of my inner demons out of my head and onto the page, and it's helped to quiet them a little bit. They're still there, but they're a bit quieter than they used to be.
so is Killeroo keeping them in line, or is
Well, in that story, like Killeroo is the inner demon.
yeah, I
So
know.
I was just using him as sort of like a avatar for what those demons are saying. But yeah, I guess he's just not. He's still pretty nasty in some of the other stories, but he's not as nasty to me as he used to be.
That's good. That's a good.
Hmm.
It sounds like you're getting into a good relationship there.
Yeah,
I'm not going to ask you to choose a favorite artist that you work
yeah,
with, but maybe if you can tell us a collaboration that really surprised you, an artist that pushed you as a writer, maybe, or that
yeah.
transformed your ideas to something greater than what you thought, or
I'd say I've done several stories with Adam Rose. He's a Queensland-based artist. Um, he's done a couple of gang war stories, and he also collaborated with me on the Township Mine book,
yeah,
which is probably the latest book as far as chronology is concerned. That's the one.
that's this one.
Yeah,
Great book.
and just I think it was just like he started out with the first gang wars story, maybe a little green. I needed to pull him up on a few things here and there, as far as getting things drawn right. But over this course of the three stories that we worked on, he's really blossomed into a much greater artist than he used to be, and that was kind of enjoyable to be a part of. You know, just sort of, and he lifted the stories that I had written to a point that I didn't think they would go. So yeah, I guess I really enjoyed working with Adam on those stories in particular. But like you say, there's been a lot of great artists that I've worked with, so it is hard to pinpoint one. Emmanuel Hernes, who did the Stones of Karangira one, like that took took a long time to get that story done, but I liked how that evolved, because it's basically Killeroo dealing with PTSD after the Gang Wars series, and putting that on paper and seeing how he reacts, and sort of how he came from an arc of wanting to be a good guy, but just a bit like Breaking Bad, they start out with the greatest of intentions, and it doesn't always end well. So
Yeah. Funny enough, the first one that I read was Scars, and the second one
yeah.
I read was that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the second one I read was that one, and I was completely hooked. As soon as I read those two, I was like, "Oh yeah, I need more." So then I started getting, Gang Wars and Township Mind. So yeah, great stuff,
Cheers.
and definitely you've worked with really great artists
Yeah.
there, and it's great to see also, some that I didn't know about at all. Obviously, I'm not Australian. I didn't. Well, now I am, but I didn't grow up in Australia, I should say. But so I'm learning about Australian creators,
Yeah.
and to see stuff from John Somariba, who is doing stuff with Marvel and things like that. But also to see other creators that I haven't encountered anywhere else. So
Yeah.
it's been great. So then I checked them. It's like, okay, well, I really like this art style. So what else has this person done? Anyway, what's in the future for Killeroo?
Well, like I said, there's the 6th and final episode of Gang Wars, which I've actually got. If you just bear with me, I've got a few pages that I've been drawing for those. So I can sort of give you
We're gonna get a
a
preview
look at.
here.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how well the red pencil's going to show up on the screen, but yeah, so that's page 1 from Gang Wars number 6. That's
Nice.
And I've got page 2 here somewhere. There it is. Yeah, so sort of there's a close-up shot of Killeroo there, sort of just walking a bit. He's just been through a bit of trauma there, so did lots of shadows and heavy inks for that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the idea, is to basically finish off the Gang Wars series with that story, which leads into the Stones book and then Township, and then I'm probably going to do an ongoing series after that that's set after Township Mine, where basically he's on the run from the government, from the media, because he's been like an urban legend before, but at the end of Township Mine, he's sort of exposed on TV as sort of like a Bigfoot is real sort of thing. So yeah, that's kind of where the Killeroo story will go from there. I'm also working with Stuart Black on a crossover with his Four Horse Femmes book, which is I think he's about 60 pages in. So that'll be a full color book, which I'm looking forward to. We'll probably do a Kickstarter for that one, maybe in the next month or two, because he's almost done, and then we can just print it and send it out. So yeah,
that will feature Killeroo, and it will be in color.
Yes, yeah,
Nice.
and that's also the plan for Gang Wars 6 and the ongoing series. Is I'm going to color it as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Go, because up until now everything's been black and white.
Just all black and white. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. And were you thinking also of trade paperbacks?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that's been stopping that, as you know, is because Gang Wars 6 isn't done. It's hard for me to collect it all because the middle chapter's not there. So the idea is, once Gang Wars 6 is done, I'm then going to produce, and I'll probably use Kickstarter to fund that as well, because trade paperbacks aren't cheap. and I'll basically collect from Scars through to Township Mine in either 2 or 3 trade paperbacks, because it's as you know, not getting my character into libraries and bookshops is really limiting the scope and the audience that he can reach. So yeah, that's definitely on the cards for hopefully by the end of the year.
Excellent, excellent. So meanwhile, where and how can people buy Killeroo?
Well, I'm still working on the website, so that's down at present. But if people want to just go to Facebook to the Killeroo page and just drop me a message there, or Instagram or Twitter, I've got Killeroo pages set up on all 3 of those. So yeah, just
Excellent,
drop me a line and I can send you some books.
excellent. Now, at the end of last year and early this year, Australia was quite literally burning, and lots of creators got together and created this amazing anthology book called Australia Burns, and which is really excellent. Also, an excellent anthology from different creators, different writers, with short stories, and all the proceeds of it go to charity as well.
Yeah, that's right.
And I know that you were quite heavily involved with this. So can you tell us how it came about?
Big Tim Styles in Canberra came up with the idea and started putting that book together. And I'm a friend of his, and I asked if he had someone on board to do the design side of it, because I can do that on my computer with do the layouts for it. So I came on board to basically help him compile it and get it ready to print. And at a certain point during the production cycle of that book, Tim had to essentially drop out, or not drop out, but become less of a name on the book, because as a government employee, he couldn't be seen as criticizing this government in any form. So basically it got handballed over to me, which I was happy to take on, and not really realizing exactly how much work I was getting myself into, but it all worked out in the end. We've got some amazing artists and some really heartbreaking stories in that book. Like, even as the pages were coming in and I'm putting them into the book, like I was just breaking down in tears. Like, some of them are really quite brutal, but
Look, just
it needed to be said, sort of thing. So
yeah, look, just with the very first story, I was already, already in tears. That first story really, really got me. And then of course, like every anthology, every story goes in its ups and downs and different tones and all that, but there are some really, really amazing stories here, and it's really amazing how it came together. And it's a book that we as ALIA Graphic really promoted as much as we could, on Twitter and things like that. And I really, really encourage any librarian or library to get this. So where can they buy the book?
Well, it's still generating money for charity. So basically, there's not really a wholesale price for libraries and so forth. It's $20 a book, and all of that goes to the 6 charities that we've assembled. It's generated, I think, almost $20,000 now. So all of that has been donated to a bunch of charities. And you can order it from australiaburns.bigcartel.com. There's a number of options there as far as quantities that people want to order. There's a few prints there as well if you prefer to have stuff on your wall. And I think also ALS Library Services, they bought a number of a quantity of books, and I think you can order it from them as well for libraries in particular.
Yeah, because this one's actually a trade paperback and it's got
Yep.
an ISBN number. So yeah, ask your library supplier and make sure that they get it because it's really worth having. And I really think that this is the kind of book that really every Australian library should have. So
Well, I think you don't even need to be into comics really to appreciate that book. Like
yeah.
it's because that crisis just touched everyone, and it really comes through in that book.
Yeah, and it's got some real stories as well, and it's got a bit of everything for everyone, to be honest.
Yeah.
So
No, I'm
yeah,
very, very proud with how that book turned out.
yeah. Now, after Australia burned, now we have the virus. What a year! So there's a great initiative started by Australian creators to support local comic stores,
Yep.
and I believe it started with John Somariva.
That's right. Yeah.
Can you tell us about it and how people can support it? I know that you had your own art as well.
Yep. Yeah, but basically, John and David Yarden set up a number of eBay listings for creators. I think there's currently there's one from Mike Crome and Nicholas Scott and a few other artists that they've sort of been circulating it through for the last couple of weeks. And yeah, essentially the artists have donated their work, and all proceeds that the winning bidder of each item, it goes into a pool of money which is then distributed across to every comic shop in Australia, which have been doing it really tough because they haven't been able to get new books in from the US until this week.
Yeah.
So it's basically a way of creators who have been supported by these stores by them stocking our books, a way of giving back, I guess, and helping them stay open, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a great initiative.
I thought it was a really, really great initiative, and there've been some amazing. There's been some amazing
Yeah,
artwork there. I wish I had the money to buy all of them.
me too.
But yeah, unfortunately, I don't have that much money. But yeah, really worth supporting. We'll put the link for the
Yep.
eBay on our notes so that people can find it, and hopefully
Yep.
we can support the comic stores a little bit more. And just kind of wrapping up,
Sure.
at the end, would you like to share 3 comics or graphic novels that you've read recently and can recommend to others?
My all-time favorite book, which I started reading back in high school, and I'm still collecting it now, is Savage Dragon from Image Comics. It's up
Nice.
to nearly issue 250 now, and I've never stopped reading that book. It's kind of a throwback to 60s kind of superhero slugfest kind of comics. And yeah, it's just it's always been my favorite book, and still is today. What else? I tend to be, I don't read as much of the new stuff apart from Savage Dragon. I tend to go back to like the 70s and 80s for comics that I like to read. I guess Sin City would be another one. That was more of a 90s book by
Yeah.
Frank Miller, and that that book, much like Dark Knight Returns that he did for DC Comics, his work sort of changed how I looked at comics and how to tell stories and how to approach the art. Like his stuff just blew me away. Trying to think of what else.
Yeah.
I don't really tend to read a lot of comics, or I just sort of follow the artists. So
Yeah.
I'm when I go to the store, to the comic shop and look at the racks, it's the art that will grab me and determine whether I pick it up. Jason Sean Alexander did a run on Spawn recently, and I think he's started his own series called Philadelphia, and that's really, really nice too. So I guess those are probably my 3 recommendations.
Good stuff. Excellent.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us today, Darren. And
No worries.
where can people find you, follow you?
I'm all over social media, so it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. It's not hard to find me. So if you just type in Killeroo, you'll get me, and just make sure you spell it correctly. So that's KILLEROO.
No worries. Thank you very much. Thanks for your
No
time.
worries. Cheers.
And you know, good luck finishing that last book. I'm looking forward to it. And also that crossover. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. See ya.
Cheers.